If this was a Stephen King novel, I'd already have a deceased pet and a haunted bathroom. All I had was a wife who loathed me and a leaking faucet that dripped like a metronome counting down to my doom. My name's Alex Connelly, I'm 38 years old, and I fix computers for a living. Not exactly the stuff of heroic legends, but as it turns out, knowing how to hack into security systems comes in handy when your life falls apart. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in October. Kayla, my wife of 7 years, was standing in our kitchen wearing a business suit that cost more than my monthly salary, tapping her manicured nails against her coffee mug like she was sending Morse code to someone more interesting than me. "I've got another late client meeting tonight," she announced without looking up from her phone. "Don't wait up." "Third one this week," I said, pouring myself coffee from the pot she'd nearly emptied. "Business must be booming." She shot me a look that could freeze antifreeze. "Some of us are ambitious, Alex. Some of us want more than fixing broken laptops for the rest of our lives." Kayla worked in real estate, selling overpriced condos to young professionals who thought granite countertops were a personality trait. She was good at it, too. Had that polished, fake-friendly demeanor that made people want to trust her with their life savings. What I didn't know yet was that she'd been practicing that same act on me for months. "Who's the client?" I asked, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. "Ron Devlin. He's looking at some commercial properties downtown." She said his name like it tasted sweet. "Big investor. This could be huge for me." Ron Devlin. Even I knew that name. Local boy made good, owned a chain of fitness centers, drove a BMW that cost more than our house. The kind of guy who wore cologne to the gym and called everyone buddy while looking over their shoulder for someone more important to talk to. "Sounds like quite the catch," I said. Kayla's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "He is." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. After she left, I sat in our living room. Correction, her living room, since she'd picked out every stick of furniture and reminded me of it regularly, and tried to shake the feeling that I was missing something obvious. The house felt different lately, colder, like the walls themselves were keeping secrets. I pulled out my laptop and did what any suspicious husband in the digital age does. I started investigating. Kayla's social media was a carefully curated showcase of success, photos of sold houses, client testimonials, inspirational quotes about living your best life. But scrolled down far enough, and there were other things. Comments from Ron Devlin on almost every post, heart emojis, fire emojis, the kind of attention that crossed the line from professional to personal. My phone buzzed, text from my old friend Tommy, who ran an auto repair shop across town. "Beer tonight? Heard you might need one." Interesting. Tommy wasn't the type to reach out unless he'd heard something. In a city this size, gossip traveled faster than bad news, and apparently I was both. I met Tommy at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar that looked like it had been decorated by someone who'd given up on life, but still had decent taste in whiskey. Tommy was already 3 beers deep when I arrived, which meant whatever he had to tell me was going to hurt. "Sit down, Alex," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We need to talk." I ordered a beer and waited. Tommy had known me since high school. We'd been through divorces, job losses, and that unfortunate incident with his ex-wife's sister that we'd agreed never to mention again. If he looked this uncomfortable, I was in for a world of pain. "I heard some things," he started, "about Kayla." "What kind of things?" "The kind that make me wish I'd kept my mouth shut." He took a long pull from his beer. "She's been seen around town with Ron Devlin, and I don't mean at open houses." My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "Seen where?" "Restaurants. His condo. That new hotel downtown." Tommy finally looked at me. "I'm sorry, man. I thought you should know." I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to feel that sharp shock of betrayal that comes with unexpected news. Instead, I felt the dull ache of confirmation. All those late nights, all those client meetings, all those times she'd come home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "How long?" I asked. "Couple months, maybe more. Rico, you remember Rico, works at the gym. He says Ron's been bragging about it, talking about how he's going to upgrade his living situation soon." The pieces clicked into place like a combination lock opening. Our house was worth nearly $400,000. We'd bought it together, but Kayla had handled all the paperwork. She knew real estate law better than I knew the back of my laptop keyboard. If she wanted me gone, she'd need a reason that would hold up in court. "There's more," Tommy said. "Brittany Morrison, Kayla's friend from her office. She's been telling people that Kayla's scared of you, says you've been getting aggressive lately, that she's worried about what you might do." Brittany Morrison. Blonde, bubbly, and about as trustworthy as a chocolate teapot. She'd been to our house for dinner parties, had smiled to my face while apparently planning my character assassination behind my back. Aggressive? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The most aggressive thing I've done lately is tell the cable company they were overcharging us. I know that, you know that, but if enough people start talking... Tommy shrugged. Mudsticks, I finished my beer and stood up. Thanks for telling me. I owe you one. What are you going to do? I smiled, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. I'm going to fix this problem. It's what I do. Driving home, my mind was already working. Kayla thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. What she didn't realize was that I'd been watching her moves for weeks, cataloging every inconsistency, every lie, every late-night phone call she thought I couldn't hear. She wanted to paint me as the dangerous husband? Fine. But in this game, the house always wins. And I was about to show her exactly what that meant. The next morning started like a scene from a bad television drama. I was in the kitchen, making coffee and trying to process everything Tommy had told me, when Kayla walked in wearing her victim face. You know the one, all wide eyes and trembling lips, like she was starring in her own personal tragedy. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaking just enough to sound authentic. "About what?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. "About us. About how you've been treating me lately?" She sat down at the kitchen table, positioning herself so the morning light hit her face just right. Even in crisis, Kayla knew her angles. "I can't live like this anymore." "Like what, exactly?" "You're angry all the time, suspicious. Yesterday you grabbed my arm so hard you left marks." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing what looked like finger-shaped bruises on her forearm. I stared at those marks, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. "I never touched you, Kayla, not once. Don't lie to me." Her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. "I have the bruises to prove it." The bruises were real. I could see that much. But I'd never laid a hand on my wife in anger, not in 7 years of marriage, not even during our worst fights, which meant either I was losing my mind, or Kayla was a better actress than I'd given her credit for. "When did this supposedly happen?" I asked. "Last night, when you came home from the bar. You were drunk and angry, and when I tried to talk to you about our problems, you grabbed me." She was crying now, real tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so scared, Alex. I didn't know what you were going to do. I'd come home from Murphy's Tavern around 10 o'clock, stone sober despite Tommy's news, and gone straight to bed. Kayla had been in the guest room with the door locked, claiming she had work to do. We'd barely spoken 2 words to each other. "That's not what happened," I said calmly. "And you know it." "Are you calling me a liar?" Her voice rose to just the right pitch, loud enough to sound distressed, not so loud that it seemed fake. "Are you saying I did this to myself?" Before I could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Heavy, authoritative. The kind of knock that means your day is about to get significantly worse. 2 police officers stood on my porch, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The older one, a sergeant with gray hair and tired eyes, spoke first. "Alex Connelly?" "That's me." "We've received a complaint about a domestic disturbance. Mind if we come in?" I stepped aside, because what else was I going to do? They walked into my living room like they owned the place, taking note of everything, the furniture, the family photos, the general atmosphere of a marriage that had gone cold. Kayla appeared in the doorway, still in her bathrobe, looking fragile and frightened. She'd messed up her hair and smudged her makeup just enough to look like she'd had a rough night. "Officers, thank you for coming," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I was so scared. The younger cop, who looked like he'd graduated from the academy about 5 minutes ago, pulled out a notebook. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" Kayla launched into her story, painting me as an increasingly unstable husband who'd finally crossed the line into physical violence. She showed them the bruises, described my erratic behavior over the past few weeks, and mentioned that several friends had noticed changes in my personality. "Has your husband ever been physical with you before?" the sergeant asked. "Not like this," Kayla said, which was technically true while being completely misleading. But he's been getting more aggressive, more controlling. I've been afraid to leave him alone in the house. I listened to this performance with a mixture of admiration and disgust. She was good. Really good. If I didn't know better, I'd believe her myself. Mr. Connelly, the sergeant turned to me. What's your side of the story? There is no story, I said. I never touched my wife. I don't know where those bruises came from, but they didn't come from me. The younger cop scribbled in his notebook. Sir, have you been drinking lately? More than usual? I had 2 beers last night at Murphy's Tavern. You can check with the bartender. And when you came home, what happened then? I said goodnight to my wife and went to bed, that's it. The sergeant looked between us, clearly trying to decide who was telling the truth. In domestic disputes, they're trained to believe the victim, especially when there's physical evidence. Kayla's bruises trumped my denials every time. Ma'am, do you have somewhere safe you can stay tonight? He asked Kayla. My friend Brittany said I could stay with her, Kayla replied. But what about tomorrow? What about next week? I can't live in fear in my own home. The sergeant nodded. We're going to file a report. Ma'am, you can apply for a temporary restraining order if you want additional protection. Mr. Connelly, I strongly suggest you find somewhere else to stay for a few days while this gets sorted out. This is my house too, I said. Sir, nobody's saying it isn't. But right now your wife is afraid of you, and she has physical evidence to back up her claims. The best thing you can do is give her some space and let cooler heads prevail. After the cops left, Kayla dropped the frightened victim act like a mask she was tired of wearing. You should pack a bag, she said, her voice back to its normal, cold tone. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. She walked to the window and watched the police car pull away. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to get violent. I never touched you, Kayla, and we both know it. She turned back to me, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that made my veins run cold. Not fear, not sadness, but satisfaction. The look of someone whose plan was unfolding flawlessly. Prove it, she said. I packed a bag and drove to Tommy's shop, where he let me crash in the small apartment above his office. As I lay on his lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling and listening to traffic pass by outside, I realized that Kayla had just made her first real mistake. She thought she was playing chess, moving pieces around the board to put me in checkmate. What she didn't know was that I'd been recording everything in our house for the past 3 months. Security cameras, audio devices, motion sensors. I'd installed them after we'd been broken into last spring, and I'd never gotten around to telling her about all of them. Somewhere in that digital archive was the truth about last night. And tomorrow, I was going to find it. The house always wins, Kayla. But you forgot to check who was dealing the cards. Tommy's coffee tasted like it had been filtered through old socks, but it was better than the alternative, which was no coffee at all. I'd been awake since 5 a.m., sitting at his kitchen table with my laptop, scrolling through hours of security footage from our house. Find anything yet? Tommy asked, looking over my shoulder. More than I bargained for, I said, pausing the video at a timestamp from 3 nights ago. Look at this. On the screen, Kayla was in our living room, talking on her phone. The audio was crystal clear, thanks to the microphone I'd hidden in the bookshelf. I know it seems extreme, she was saying, but it's the only way to get him out of the house without a messy divorce. Once I have the restraining order, I can claim the house is unsafe for me to live in. Then it's just a matter of time before the court awards me full possession. Tommy whistled low. She's talking about framing you. Gets better, I said, fast-forwarding to yesterday evening. Watch this. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., about an hour after I'd gone to bed. Kayla crept out of the guest room and went into the bathroom. She came out 5 minutes later, rolling up her sleeve to examine her arm. Even on the grainy security footage, you could see the fresh bruises. Holy shit, Tommy breathed. She did that to herself. Looks like it. Probably used a pair of pliers or something similar to make marks that looked like fingerprints. I saved the video file to a flash drive. Question is, what do I do with this? Take it to the cops. Show them she lied. And then what? She claims I doctored the footage? That I'm some kind of tech wizard who can fake security videos? I shook my head. No, this needs to be handled more carefully. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard about your troubles with Kayla. If you want to know the truth about her and Ron, meet me at Denny's on 5th Street at noon. B. B had to be Brittany Morrison. Interesting. Either this was part of Kayla's plan to gather more evidence against me, or there was trouble in paradise. I decided to find out which. Denny's at noon was exactly what you'd expect. Tired waitresses, burnt coffee, and the lingering smell of grease. Brittany sat in a corner booth, nervously checking her phone every few seconds. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her usual polished look was gone. Blonde hair pulled back into a messy ponytail, no makeup. "Alex," she said as I sat down, "thanks for coming. Your text said you had info about Kayla and Ron." Brittany glanced around like she was expecting someone to jump out from behind the pie display. "I feel terrible about what's happening to you. What Kayla's doing, it's not right." "What exactly is she doing, Brittany?" "She's been planning it for months. Ron, the affair, the fake assault, all of it," she said, shaking as she reached for her coffee. "She promised me not to tell you, said you'd be better off without her." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to," she admitted. "Kayla's convincing, but after last night, seeing the cops at your house, I can't be part of this anymore." "What happened last night?" "She called me around midnight, laughing about how well her plan had worked. Said you looked like a kicked puppy when the police told you to leave." Brittany's voice dropped to a whisper. She was proud of herself, Alex, proud of destroying you. A cold, hard anger settled in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal, it was enjoyment. "There's more," Brittany continued. "Ron's been bragging to his friends. He says once Kayla gets the house in the divorce, they'll flip it and buy a bigger place in the suburbs. He's already picked the neighborhood." "How do you know this?" "Rico Martinez. He works at Ron's gym. We've been seeing each other." Brittany blushed slightly. "He told me everything." I leaned back, processing. Kayla and Ron weren't just having an affair, they were running a con. Frame the husband, get him out of the house, take everything in the divorce, and disappear with the profits. If I was too weak to fight back, it was a clever plan. "Brittany, I need you to do something," I said. "Anything. Keep pretending to be Kayla's friend. Don't let her know you talked to me. Can you do that?" She nodded. "What are you planning?" I smiled. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want, and then I'm going to take it all away." I spent the afternoon getting things in motion. I called the courthouse and scheduled a hearing to contest the restraining order. Then I contacted Pete Kowalski, a family lawyer known for being thorough, honest, and tough. "You've got security footage of her faking the assault?" Pete asked after I explained the situation. "Multiple angles, crystal clear audio, timestamps proving I was nowhere near her when it happened." "That's solid," Pete said. "But proving she lied is just the start. She's probably got other tricks up her sleeve. Hidden assets, false claims about your income. You need to be ready for a nasty fight." "It's already ugly," I said. "Now I want to make it expensive." That night, I made a list of everything I knew about Kayla's plan. The fake assault was just the first move. Next, she'd file for divorce, claim she needed the house for a safe space, and Ron would be waiting to comfort her. It was a good plan, but I wasn't the man she thought I was. I was the guy who taught her how to use the home security system, and I still had access to everything. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m. I arrived early, sharp in my best suit, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Pete Kowalski met me at the courthouse steps, looking ready for the battle ahead. "Ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since she decided to play games with my life." Judge Patricia Morrison, in her 60s and tough as nails, listened as Kayla's lawyer, Davidson, made his case for keeping the restraining order. Kayla, playing the role of the victim, dabbed her eyes with tissues, showing bruises that had already begun to fade to a sickly yellow-green. She looked convincing, until it was Pete's turn. "We have evidence that Mrs. Connelly's allegations are false," Pete said, revealing the security footage. On the big screen, the timestamp showed me clearly in bed at 10:15 p.m. while Kayla was in the guest room. Then came footage from 11:47 p.m., Kayla emerging from the bathroom with fresh bruises. The courtroom went silent as Pete detailed how Kayla's scheme wasn't just about the restraining order, but about her manipulating everything to take my house and assets. It was over for her. I had the evidence, and I was about to make sure she paid for every lie. "As you can see, Your Honor, Mrs. Connelly inflicted these injuries on herself, nearly 2 hours after my client was asleep in another room." Davidson jumped to his feet. "Objection. This footage could easily be doctored or manipulated." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Mr. Kowalski, can you authenticate this evidence?" "Absolutely, Your Honor. We have the original digital files, complete with metadata showing when and where they were recorded. We also have audio recordings of Mrs. Connelly discussing her plan to frame my client. The audio was even more damaging than the video. Kayla's voice clear as a bell, talking to someone on the phone about getting me out of the house without a messy divorce and how the restraining order was just the first step. I watched Kayla's face as her own words played back in the courtroom. The color drained from her cheeks, and for the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely afraid. But I wasn't done yet. Your Honor, Pete continued, we also have evidence that Mrs. Connelly is engaged in an extramarital affair with one Ron Devlin, and that this alleged assault is part of a larger scheme to defraud my client of his share of the marital home. He presented photos of Kayla and Ron together at restaurants, hotels, and his condo. He played recorded phone conversations where they discussed their plans to flip the house after the divorce. He even had bank records showing that Kayla had been moving money into a secret account that I wasn't supposed to know about. By the time Pete finished, Davidson looked like he wanted to crawl under the defendant's table and disappear. Kayla was crying again, but these weren't the calculated tears of a victim. These were the desperate sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. Judge Morrison removed her glasses and fixed Kayla with a stare that could have melted steel. Mrs. Connelly, making false accusations against your husband is not only morally reprehensible, it's also perjury, which is a felony in this state. Filing a false police report is another crime. Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done? Kayla could barely speak through her tears. Your Honor, I can explain? I'm sure you can. But right now, I'm more interested in making sure justice is served. The judge turned to me. Mr. Connelly, I'm dismissing the restraining order immediately. Furthermore, I'm granting you exclusive use of the marital home until this matter can be resolved in divorce court. She looked at Kayla. Mrs. Connelly, you have 24 hours to remove your belongings. After that, you cannot return without a court order. Do I make myself clear? Kayla nodded. And Mrs. Connelly, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges. You should get a criminal defense lawyer. Pete clapped me on the shoulder as we left. That went better than expected. She's going to have a hard time explaining this to her friends. Think she'll try something desperate? Pretty likely. Cornered animals lash out. Pete handed me his card. Call if anything happens, and change your locks. I went home, changed the locks, then called a moving company to box up Kayla's things and put them in storage. I paid for the first month, but after that, she was on her own. The house felt different by evening, cleaner. I ordered pizza, opened a beer, and relaxed in my living room, thinking about the divorce. With Pete's evidence, Kayla would be lucky to get half of anything. Ron would probably bail on her, and Brittany had already picked sides. My phone rang. Tommy. Heard you won big today, he said. Word travels fast. So what's next? Press charges? I don't know. For now, I just want to enjoy my house. Fair enough. Want company? I've got whiskey. Come over. We'll drink to justice served. Tommy arrived, and we sat on the back porch watching the sunset. The whiskey was smooth, the company good. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. You know what the best part is? I said. What's that? She thought I was weak. Turns out being a computer geek has its advantages. Tommy laughed. Here's to the house always winning. But knowing who's dealing the cards, I added. But I knew this wasn't over. Kayla was desperate now, and desperate people make mistakes. Ron was probably furious, and dangerous people can be a threat. I had won this round, but the game was far from over. 3 days later, I came home to find my front door wide open, the house trashed, furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered. It looked like chaos. But I'd upgraded my security after the courthouse victory. Motion sensors, silent alarms, cameras uploading everything to the cloud. I pulled up the footage. At 2:17 p.m., Ron Devlin was clearly seen breaking in, but he wasn't alone. Rico Martinez was with him, nervously checking his watch. Rico said, "Breaking and entering is a felony." Ron tossed couch cushions on the floor. "We're not stealing. We're just looking for leverage." Leverage for what? Alex has files on Kayla, right? Security footage, audio recordings, all that computer nerd stuff. If we can find his backup drives and destroy them, maybe we can still salvage this situation. Rico picked up a framed photo of me and Kayla from our wedding day and stared at it. Man, she really screwed him over, didn't she? He had it coming. Guy like that thinking he deserves a woman like Kayla. Ron was in my home office now, pulling out filing cabinets. She's way out of his league. Yeah, but still, faking domestic violence. That's cold. Ron stopped searching and turned to face Rico. You having second thoughts about this? Maybe. Brittany says Alex is actually a decent guy. Says Kayla's been lying to everyone about what kind of person he is. Brittany talks too much, and so do you. Ron's voice had taken on a harder edge. You want to back out? Fine. but keep your mouth shut about what we're doing here." They spent another hour tearing apart my house, but they never found what they were looking for, mainly because my backup drives weren't in the house. They were in a safety deposit box at the bank, along with copies of everything I'd given to Pete Kowalski. I called the police from my car and sent them the security footage. Then I called Pete. "They broke into your house looking for evidence?" Pete sounded incredulous. "These people are either very stupid or very desperate." "Probably both. What happens now?" "Now we have them on breaking and entering, destruction of property, and conspiracy. Ron Devlin just graduated from being Kayla's boyfriend to being her co-defendant." The police arrived at the same time I did. Detective Sarah Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, walked through my destroyed house while I showed her the security footage on my laptop. "This is some of the clearest video evidence I've ever seen," she said. "Your system is impressive." "I believe in being thorough." "Good thing, too. These guys are looking at serious jail time." She paused the video at a frame showing Ron's face clearly visible. "You know what's interesting? We've been investigating Ron Devlin for insurance fraud related to one of his gyms. This gives us leverage to flip one of his associates." "Rico Martinez?" "That's the one. He's small-time, probably just got caught up in this mess. If we can convince him to testify against Devlin and your wife, this whole thing wraps up with a bow on top." 2 hours later, Rico was sitting in an interrogation room downtown, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I wasn't there for the questioning, but Pete filled me in on the details later. Rico sang like a canary at sunrise. He told them about the insurance fraud, about Ron's plan to flip my house, about Kayla's fake assault, and about a dozen other schemes the two of them had been running. By the time he was finished, Ron and Kayla were looking at enough charges to put them away for years. But the best part, the part that made all the stress and heartache worth it, came the next morning. I was having coffee in my kitchen, enjoying the silence of a house that was finally mine again, when there was a knock at the front door. Through the peephole, I could see Kayla standing on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Kayla?" "I want to make a deal," she said. Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red from crying. "I'll give you an uncontested divorce, sign over my share of the house, whatever you want. Just don't press charges." "Why would I do that?" "Because despite everything that's happened, we were married for 7 years. That has to count for something." I looked at this woman who had shared my bed, my home, my life, and tried to feel something other than contempt, but there was nothing there. She'd burned it all away with her lies and schemes. "You're right," I said finally. 7 years does count for something. It counts for you knowing exactly how much damage you were doing when you decided to destroy me. "Alex, please. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to go to prison." "You made choices, Kayla, and choices have consequences." I started to close the door, then stopped. "Oh, and just so you know, Ron's been telling the police that the whole thing was your idea. Says he was just going along with it because he was in love with you." The look of betrayal on her face was almost worth everything she'd put me through, almost. "He's lying," she whispered. "Maybe, but that's between you and your lawyer now." I closed the door and turned the lock. Through the window, I watched her walk to her car. A beat-up Honda that was a far cry from the BMW she'd been riding around in with Ron. She sat behind the wheel for a long time, probably crying, probably trying to figure out how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. The answer was simple. She'd underestimated her mark. She'd thought she was playing against a weak, trusting fool who would roll over and take whatever punishment she decided to dish out. Instead, she'd been playing against someone who understood that in any good con game, the real trick is making sure you're the one holding the cards when the final hand is dealt. 6 months later, I was sitting in my backyard, grilling burgers for Tommy and a few other friends, when Pete called with the final update. "Kayla took a plea deal," he said. 2 years probation, restitution for the property damage, and a permanent restraining order that keeps her away from you." "What about Ron?" "He wasn't so lucky. The insurance fraud conviction got him 3 years in state prison. Rico testified against him and got off with community service." "And Brittany?" "She's dating a nice accountant and staying out of trouble. Says to tell you thanks for not dragging her into the court case." I hung up the phone and looked around my yard. My house, my friends, my life, all of it exactly the way I wanted it. Kayla had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, she'd only succeeded in showing me how much I had to lose. Tommy walked over with a beer in his hand and a satisfied grin on his face. "So it's really over. It's really over. What are you going to do now?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'm going to live well. They say it's the best revenge." "Sounds like a plan." Tommy raised his beer. Here's to the house always winning. Here's to making sure you're the one dealing the cards. As the sun set over my city, my house, my life, I realized that Kayla had been right about one thing. I had deserved better than what our marriage had become. I deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect. I deserved a partner who saw me as an ally instead of an obstacle. Now I had something even better. I had peace, justice, and the knowledge that when push came to shove, I'd been strong enough to fight for what was mine and smart enough to win. The house always wins, but only if you remember who's holding the deed.